The morning sun draped itself lazily over our quiet neighborhood, casting long golden shadows across the manicured lawns. It was a picturesque scene, the kind you'd expect on the cover of a real estate brochure. Everything was perfect, except for Karen. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association, was a force of nature. She wielded the HOA rulebook like a sword ready to slice through any perceived offenses. Her presence was as constant as the sunrise, her voice, an irritating alarm that called out from across the street each morning. The unfortunate target of her morning diatribes, my dog Baxter. Baxter was a gentle soul, a golden retriever who saw the world with endless curiosity and joy. His morning routine involved a leisurely trot across our front yard, nose dipping into the fresh morning dew. But peace was a fleeting companion in our little suburban utopia. Karen's voice would pierce the tranquility, like a pebble skimming across a still pond. Her screeches cut through the air, accusing Baxter of every conceivable crime against neighborhood harmony. To her, he was a menace, digging imaginary holes, barking at invisible threats, a disturbance in her otherwise meticulously controlled universe. I watched from the window each day, sipping my coffee, a silent observer to the morning ritual. Her accusations were as predictable as the sun rising in the east, but I held my peace. There was something almost theatrical about it, her arms waving dramatically, her face contorted with self-righteous zeal. Baxter, ever oblivious, would simply wag his tail, unbothered by the human drama unfolding above him. My response was a calm acceptance. Like a rock standing strong against the tide, I had lived in this neighborhood long enough to know that Karen's bark was worse than her bite. The key was to stay calm, to not give her the satisfaction of a reaction. A simple nod or a wave would suffice, and Karen would eventually retreat, muttering under her breath about HOA bylaws and canine misconduct. But beneath my calm facade, a plan was slowly taking shape, an idea subtle yet persistent, like a seed breaking through the soil. I knew her complaints were unfounded, but proving it required patience and precision. So I decided to let the truth speak for itself. The world is more revealing when observed through the lens of technology. Cameras discreetly placed could capture the reality Karen seemed so determined to distort. It would be my silent witness, an objective eye to unravel her narrative. Each morning I visualized the angles and the evidence I would gather, all while maintaining the art of nonchalance. Karen, with her relentless pursuit of perceived infractions, had inadvertently become the catalyst for change. Her own actions would be the very thread I would pull, unraveling the tapestry of her self-installed authority. The thought brought a serene smile to my face, hidden behind the rim of my coffee cup. The stage was set, the players in place. Baxter, blissfully unaware, continued his morning adventures, guided by the scent of the new day. Karen, ever vigilant, was poised for her next performance, and I, watchful, composed, was ready to turn the tide in this quiet suburban theater. In the end, truth, like the sun, would rise, and the shadows Karen cast would find themselves illuminated, leaving her nowhere to hide. The morning sun strained to pierce the heavy clouds, casting a dull glow over the cul-de-sac. My dog Max and I ventured outside, embracing the quiet serenity before the day's chaos erupted. Yet, as expected, serenity was never a long-term visitor here, not with Karen's shadow lurking. Every neighborhood has its own rhythm, a silent understanding among its inhabitants. Ours was frequently disrupted by Karen's fervent devotion to her self-appointed role as enforcer of the HOA diktats. A role she played with the zeal of a zealot and the finesse of a bull in a china shop. My mind still lingered on yesterday's encounter as I sipped my coffee, looking over the garden where Max sniffed aimlessly. The cameras were discreet, nestled among the roses, their lenses catching the world in crisp detail. It was a small act of rebellion, one that gave me a semblance of control against the storm that was Karen, But control is a fragile illusion. I realized this when I found a new citation tucked beneath my windshield wiper, its edge fluttering like a mockingbird's wing. Grass height violation, it read in a bold, uncompromising font. I stood there surrounded by the lush green perfection of my lawn and let out a quiet, incredulous laugh. Karen was escalating. Her tactics were a blend of pettiness and precision, like a chess player who only knew how to play by smashing the board. The HOA's guidelines suddenly seemed to multiply, new rules sprouting like weeds overnight. Absurdities disguised as order. It wasn't just me. The neighborhood buzzed with tales of Karen's crusade. The Joneses were cited for unauthorized garden gnomes, their whimsical sentinels deemed a blight upon her envisioned paradise. I imagined Karen prowling the streets at dawn, clipboard in hand, her eyes scanning for the slightest deviation from her rigid standards. Gossip, too, flowed through the grapevine, carrying whispers of Karen's latest decrees. I overheard snippets as I walked Max, each story a blend of disbelief and resigned humor. Her reputation spread like wildfire, a modern-day Medusa who turned conviviality into stone with a single glare. Each citation, each whispered tale added weight to my resolve. The cameras were my secret ally, their recordings, a quiet testament to the absurdity of it all. I watched as they captured the world beyond my garden, tiny windows into the theater of suburban life. One afternoon, the footage revealed something extraordinary. Karen, her face a mask of indignant purpose, marched towards my property, a ruler clutched in her fist. Her intent was clear, her mission to enforce her latest mandate with surgical precision. But as she stepped over the boundary, something shifted. A small trip, a stumble caught mid-stride, a moment of vulnerability etched in digital permanence. I saved the clip a talisman against the onslaught of unfairness. It wasn't just evidence, it was a mirror reflecting her absurdity back at her. But as the days passed, I found myself watching less for her missteps and more for the small moments of humanity that slipped through her armor. Her eyes darting nervously, a faltering step, the way she sometimes paused, as if questioning her own convictions. In capturing her, I found a strange empathy, an understanding that even the most tyrannical enforcer could be undone by the simplest of human frailties. But empathy did not absolve her actions, nor did it diminish my resolve. I knew the time would come to present my findings. The cameras had done their job well, capturing not just her infractions, but the beating heart of our peculiar community. And soon, the HOA would have no choice but to listen. HOA. Karen, with her perpetual frown and accusatory finger, had become a creature of habit. Each morning she emerged from her taupe-colored lair like a clockwork banshee screeching at the dawn, and my unsuspecting dog, Max. Her complaints were as predictable as the sunrise, a daily ritual of hostility that pierced the neighborhood's peaceful veneer. I watched from behind my lace curtains, the shadows of the room concealing my silent amusement. It was almost a dance now, her arms flailing. Max unbothered as he lifted his head, only to return to the important task of sunbathing. To anyone else it might have seemed ridiculous, but I saw it as an opportunity. The cameras had been a stroke of genius, a quiet rebellion against her reign of absurdity. Nestled discreetly among the garden gnomes and hanging baskets, they documented every theatrical performance. I reviewed the footage each evening, the recordings, a symphony of evidence. Each frame captured her malice, her disdain, her utter disregard for the tranquility she claimed to protect. With a collection of videos stashed away like treasures, I pondered my next move. Patience was key. A subtle counter, not an outright declaration of war, for battles won with grace were sweeter in their victory. The HOA meeting was approaching a congregation of wary homeowners and seemingly arbitrary rules. I prepared meticulously, crafting my presentation with the precision of a chess player, anticipating every move. The footage would be my checkmate. When the day arrived, I entered the community hall with Max trotting proudly at my side, his tail a banner of defiance. The room was a tableau of pastel cardigans and polite smiles, a stark contrast to the undercurrents of tension winding through the air. Karen was already there, seated like a queen, presiding over her court, her eyes narrowing as she caught sight of me. I stood before them, calm and composed, the air thick with anticipation. The click of a remote and the screen flickered to life. Her visage filled the room, a looped montage of her misdeeds performed against the backdrop of my garden. Gasps rippled through the crowd, a wave of disbelief that crashed against the shores of her authority. Silence followed, heavy and profound, until a single voice broke it, a neighbor perhaps emboldened by the spectacle. It was then, amidst the murmurs of dissent, that Karen's mask slipped, her confident facade shattered, revealing the uncertainty underneath. In the aftermath, fines were levied, the consequences of her own making, finally catching up to her. I watched as she stormed out her departure, a storm cloud dissipating on the horizon. It was over. The neighborhood exhaled the air lighter, free from the oppression of her scrutiny. Max and I lingered a moment longer, basking in the quiet victory. The die had been cast, not with theatrics, but with the slow, steady hand of justice. As we strolled home, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of victory. A new day awaited, and with it, the peace we had rightfully reclaimed. The morning after the cameras caught their first glimpse of Karen's wrath, the neighborhood seemed to shift. It was subtle, like a breeze carrying whispers through the trees. People began to notice the slight hitch in her step, the way her eyes flitted from door to door, no longer bold with arrogant righteousness, but tinged with wary suspicion. I observed all this from my front porch, cradling a mug of coffee, the steam spiraling upward in a lazy dance. My dog Max seemed to sense the change too. He lay peacefully at my feet, his usual watchful gaze relaxed now that Karen had been momentarily silenced. The once daily shrillness of her voice, an air-raid siren cutting through the morning calm, had quieted. It was replaced by an uneasy silence that blanketed the block like an overcast sky before a summer storm. The camera sat unobtrusively among the eaves, their presence known only to me, and perhaps to those with the keenest of observations. It felt almost poetic. The quiet machinery of justice, humming along silently, capturing truths that could not be shouted down or twisted by Karen's indignant howls. Neighbors began to exchange glances in driveways and over hedges, the air thick with unspoken words. Tension coiled between us, an invisible wire pulled taut, ready to snap. The footage had made its rounds discreetly. A few select neighbors trusted not to fan the flames too soon, but rather to stoke them carefully. Karen, of course, was oblivious to her starring role in these clandestine screenings, but her demeanor betrayed a subconscious awareness that her kingdom of complaint was faltering. Her sharp stares and the way she clutched her clipboard like a shield hinted at the fortress she felt crumbling beneath her feet. A queen watching her subjects unsure of their loyalty. The irony was thick enough to taste. She had been the self-appointed guardian of order, and now here she was, a figure teetering on the edge of the very chaos she so feared. Her edicts and dictated tranquility now lay in jeopardy, not from outside forces, but from her own overreaching grasp. Quiet moments punctuated the days, the sun casting long shadows across the street as if marking time until the inevitable reckoning. I watched, and waited, a sense of quiet power thrumming with each heartbeat. There was no rush. Justice, when it came, would come not with a bang, but with the soft whir of a tape rewinding a vignette of truth ready to play out in incontrovertible detail. In the meantime, I found myself reflecting on the nature of community, how easily it could be swayed by the loudest voice, how fragile the balance of peace truly was. We were all participants in this dance of civility, each step requiring an unspoken agreement to move together, to pause to listen. It was a dance Karen had always led with heavy boots, oblivious to the delicate rhythm beneath her feet. The real question lingered like a shadow in my mind. What happens when the music stops? When the echoes of her demands fade and the evidence stands unchallenged? Would the neighborhood breathe a collective sigh of relief? Or would the silence reveal fractures too deep to mend? I took another sip of coffee, savoring the bitter bite. It wasn't long now. The truth was a patient beast prowling slowly, waiting for the right moment to pounce, and when it did, I'd be ready to face whatever lay in its wake. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a pattern of dappled light on the pavement as I walked with Luna. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn and the promise of change. Each step felt like a whisper on the earth, a quiet testament to the calm. Before the storm, Luna trotted beside me, her tail a rhythmic metronome, blissfully unaware of the ripples our morning walks had caused. Karen had become a fixture, a spectral presence lurking at the periphery of my days. Her screeches had once shattered the tranquility, but now they were merely echoes in my memory. I had taken measures, a quiet strategy set in motion with the precision of a chess player who knows the endgame. Cameras, silent sentinels bearing witness to her tirades. I reviewed the footage late at night, the cold glow of the monitor illuminating my face as I watched the unraveling of her composure. It was like observing a storm contained in a teacup, the fury and the folly unfolding with a terrible grace. Each recorded outburst was a brushstroke on a canvas of consequence, and I was the artist, silently crafting the inevitable. The HOA meeting was a formality, a theater of decorum where the air buzzed with the anticipation of polite conflict. I arrived early, taking a seat at the back, the low hum of conversation, a soothing backdrop. I laid the evidence before them, a series of moments frozen in time, irrefutable and sharp as a shard of glass. Karen sat 3 rows ahead, her posture, rigid eyes darting like a cornered animal. I felt a pang of something not pity, but a semblance of understanding. Each of us was fighting our own battle after all, but justice, like nature, is indifferent to personal plight. The meeting unfolded like a drawn-out symphony, each note a step towards resolution. My turn came, and I presented the recordings. My voice, steady, dispassionate. The footage played a silent movie where Karen was the unwitting star, her shouts muted, leaving only the raw gestures, the accusatory finger, the jarring movements. The room was still, the silence heavy as snowfall. Her face turned a shade of red that spoke volumes, a palette of emotions, anger, disbelief, and finally resignation. It was a quiet victory, one not celebrated with cheers but marked by the soft sigh of justice served. The fine was imposed, a tangible consequence of her actions, a reminder that even shadows are accountable to the light. As the meeting adjourned, I stepped outside the cool air, a balm on my skin. Luna bounded ahead, oblivious to the intricacies of human affairs, her joy contagious. I watched her, a smile tugging at my lips as Karen emerged from the building. Our eyes met a fleeting moment, just shy of understanding. She turned away, her footsteps echoing into the distance. I stood there rooted in the present, the future unspooling before me like a tapestry woven with threads of patience and resolve. The sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon with hues of promise. Luna nudged my hand, her eyes pools of trust and innocence. We resumed our walk, the world unfurling like a new chapter, the pages fluttering softly in the gentle breeze. The sun barely touched the horizon when I slipped from my bed, the familiar anticipation mingling with a newfound calm. The cameras now silent. Sentinels had watched over my corner of tranquility, capturing every morning ritual, every unjust disturbance. Today, the culmination of quiet persistence. My footsteps echoed softly against the dewy grass. The air held a crispness, as if the world itself had taken a deep breath and was ready to exhale relief. I ambled toward the mailbox, savoring the dawn's first light. The community's awakening was gentle, a sharp contrast to the chaos Karen had once unleashed with her morning tirades. The neighborhood had been a theater of her theatrics. Her voice, a jarring alarm clock, had pierced the mornings directed venomously at my unsuspecting dog and me. It had been relentless, her screeching, as predictable as sunrise until the day the cameras blinked open their eyes. Weeks of footage collected a tapestry of her indiscretions. The evidence was irrefutable. I had delivered it quietly without fanfare to the HOA board, a group often swayed by Karen's forceful charm. Yet the truth had a way of speaking louder than even her most piercing rebukes. The board convened in hushed tones, disbelief etched on their faces as they watched the recordings. The realization rippled through them. Karen, the self-appointed arbiter of neighborhood decorum, was the very disruption she claimed to despise. Her reign of misdirected authority crumbled in the flickering light of the dimly lit conference room. Today the community would learn of the board's decision. A notice would circulate, a simple piece of paper carrying the weight of justice. The irony was delicious. Karen fined and formally reprimanded, her antics laid bare for all to see. As I turned back towards my house, the world seemed to breathe with me. No longer burdened by the dread of impending confrontation, I could almost hear the unspoken gratitude of my neighbors, those who had suffered her wrath in silence, emboldened now by her downfall. The morning unfolded with a sense of restoration. Birds undisturbed sang praises to the clear skies, while my dog frolicked with a freedom only he understood. I watched him reflecting on the quiet power of patience and the subtle art of resilience, Karen's voice. Once a dominating presence had become a mere whisper in the wind. As the day stretched on, her absence from the morning's chaos became a balm to the community's collective spirit. People emerged from their homes greeting each other with nods and smiles, a camaraderie reborn from shared relief. The neighborhood was a living organism, thriving once more in the absence of its most toxic element. I sat on my porch, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face absorbing the peace. It was a simple victory, yet profound in its impact. Karen sidelined her influence. Waning was now just another resident, her reputation reforming as the neighborhood adjusted. In the quiet aftermath, I realized the truth. Sometimes the most effective response to tyranny is not louder outrage, but quiet, unyielding persistence. The cameras had captured an injustice, but it was perseverance that restored balance. The echoes of Karen's past disruptions faded, replaced by the melody of a community healing, moving forward one peaceful morning at a time.